Welcome to Moving Conversations, a podcast for movement professionals by movement professionals. If you coach, train, or teach movement, Pilates, or fitness, then this podcast is for you. With more than 60 years of experience in fitness and Pilates, your hosts Brian Ritchie and Nora St. John explore the science of human movement, diving deep into the facts, myths, and common misconceptions, hoping to spark thought and conversation about how we view fitness and movement. Now, let's jump into Moving Conversations. And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. Good morning, Nora. How you doing?
Very well, Brian. How about yourself?
It's good. It's good. It's warming up here in DC, so I'm happy about that.
Nice.
Yeah. And we got lots to talk about today, today's topic is basically a listener request. Someone wanted us to talk about golfer's elbow, and I just thought, let's also get into not only golfer's elbow, but tennis elbow, because we're talking about the elbow joint in general. We're talking about tendinitis, tendinosis, epicondylitis. So I thought, let's jump into that. But before we get into that,
we have an update.
Yeah, we have an update. You sent me a great article, Wall Street Journal, I believe. And I read through it, and I thought it was very fascinating, and it has to do with weight loss drugs. And trust me, gang, we're going to see more of these. The more research that comes out, there's going to be a lot more articles, and it's a hot topic as well. So when they write about it, they know they're going to get eyeballs, they're going to get clicks. So you're going to hear a lot of good information, you're going to hear a lot of bad information. The article that we read basically was talking about when people are losing weight on the GLP-1, like Ozempic and Wegovy and those Zepbound, that people were losing a significant amount of muscle mass as well as fat.
Right, which is obvious if you think about it. I mean, in some sense, it's like you're probably not going to lose weight just in one place. If you're losing 10% of your body weight, it's coming from multiple places. But you mentioned earlier that this is different in that scenario, and there are not. Let's be precise here. There are not really specific ways or very detailed or precise ways that they can judge muscle mass loss versus fat loss. There are some things like DEXA scans and things. Again, there's not necessarily a gold standard, I don't think, in terms of that.
Yeah.
That really gives you a strong, yes, this is definitely fat. Yes, this is definitely lean muscle mass, and this is what's happening.
Well, the difference that I always thought of when, I was in school is they were measuring purely fat. So they were measuring a percentage of body fat. So if someone was 25% body fat, a quarter of your weight is adipose tissue, and it's distributed viscerally, subcutaneously, all over your body. Okay, cool. But everything else is considered lean body mass. But that includes organs, that includes muscle, that includes fluids, that includes, that includes everything.
It's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff. And as we talked about, every time you ingest a gram of carbohydrate, 3 grams of water, tag along. So if you're ingesting 600 grams of carbs a day, well, just do the math, and you've got 1,800 grams of water that are just going to be there for processing purposes. So if you eat less of that, you're going to lose water weight. So you have to remember that. So they're using DEXA scan in this article that we read, and it's a very imperfect way of looking at the amount of fat in the body. It's a good way, in my opinion, when you look at the before and after, you're like, oh yeah, you can see a significant loss in, you can see the adipose tissue is reduced. You can see, the muscle has reduced, but it's still very imperfect. And I don't think there is a good way, like you just said. There's not a really good way of diving in and saying, okay, how are we going to measure purely muscle?
Right. Or purely fat, for that matter. That's a little easier, but still.
Exactly. Yeah. And they were talking about sarcopenia. A couple of the articles that I was reading, and I actually tried to dive into the actual article that they were, talking about. And the article itself was, let's just say there were question marks in my mind. And when we read journal articles, you have to sort of read with a little bit of skepticism sometimes and dig a little deeper than the average, article you're going to read in a newspaper.
Now, sarcopenia, just for those who don't know, is basically muscle loss,
Yes.
muscle mass loss, right? And it's something that happens with age and with other circumstances and, different drugs and different things. So anyway,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. So they were they were looking at it and considering it sarcopenia. And the article that we read was really talking about, because it was the Wall Street Journal, they were talking about, well, here's some companies to invest in who are promoting and creating drugs that are going to fight that. So basically, if you're on Ozempic, they're going to want you to take these other drugs in order for you not to lose muscle mass. And you and I both texted each other. We're like, what about strength training? What about, other ways to not lose? So I wanted to maintain your muscle. And, I've worked with a number of doctors about things like this. And so I said, okay, what is after bariatric surgery, which is what they have a high comparison. They like to compare GLP-1 with bariatric surgery.
Yes.
So in looking at that, with the GLP-1, according to this article, with the DEXA scan, it was 38% of muscle tissue lost. So I'm just going to give a round number here. If you lost 100 pounds, 38 pounds of it was going to be lean tissue, and the rest of it was going to be body fat, according to this article. Okay, which is still significant. However, compared to bariatric surgery, where they showed it was closer to 20%, 22% of muscle loss, which is half of it, which is basically you're talking about half loss. Now, what I wonder is this: in working with bariatric surgeons and talking with them, and the nutritionists that work with bariatric surgeons, there's a strict diet that you have to maintain afterwards, which is very protein based. It is pure. I mean, it's almost just taking in as much protein as you can get. And that way it's to help prevent some of that muscle tissue loss, especially after bariatric surgery, because you can't exercise for a while because your body is going through all the healing process. So much like any other major surgery, you can't just jump into doing, the weight training that you're doing before. So they want you to make sure you're taking in enough protein per day and limit your carbohydrate intake, etc. So protein is a big part of that in order to not lose muscle mass. And my thought was, okay, how many people who are given these GLP-1 drugs are working closely with a nutritionist and being told these guidelines on protein? My clients weren't. I asked them, I said, are you working with a nutritionist on this because you've been given this prescription? Are you also working with a nutritionist alongside it? And they said, no, not at all. So that's one of the caveats in my head that, I wonder about.
And for our side, since we are movement professionals and we are not medical doctors,
exactly.
Right? So what do we want to do? So if we've got clients, and of course, if a client's already coming to you, they are doing weight training, presumably of some kind, right?
Hopefully.
But that's one of the things, hopefully, right? That's one of the things to encourage. If you've got a client who's on that and you know now that they could be losing a substantial amount of lean muscle mass, you want to say, hey, one of the things, that's good information. That's good motivation, honestly.
Yep.
If you need to create motivation in your clients or your friends or yourself to say, hey, I got to keep working out while I'm doing this because I don't want to lose that much of that lean muscle mass.
Yes, absolutely. There's no magic bullet. Everybody wants the magic pill that's only going to dissolve your body fat. And guess what? That ain't going to happen. Yeah.
And make you look like somebody you never were going to look like anyway. But there we go.
Exactly.
The fantasies live on.
Exactly. So it came down to, and we discussed this when we talked about this. Look, you still need to do your weight training in order to keep your muscle mass. And when you keep your muscle mass, you keep your metabolism higher too. So the chances of you hitting that plateau, which is now, the other thing that's in the news right now is a lot of people are hitting hard plateaus when they're on the drugs. And what's happening is, oh my gosh, they can't do anything. They're stuck. Well, guess what?
Yeah.
If you do lose a lot of muscle mass, well, guess your metabolism will slow down in general anyway. So weight training can help preserve that and can help you keep your metabolism higher than if you weren't lifting weights or doing any type of body weight exercise or general activity.
So there's our update.
Yeah.
So again, this is just one of those things like we're starting to look at how we shape this podcast, and this came up just this week, and we had just done a topic on it and wanted to kind of update you guys. And again, as trainers, as movers, as people out there, keep moving.
Yes.
Keep working, right? Keep the energy going into the muscles. And this is one of those things where the best results always come from a combination of things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, take the drugs, but also do the weight training, do the nutrition, do the things you need to do to maintain and to improve yourself along the way. And, you know, a lot of people aren't. They're going to do, I'm just going to take the drug, weight melts off, and voila, I'm where I want to be.
Our goal is always for a healthy lifestyle.
Exactly.
That's our goal. And if the drugs are there to help with that, they're just a tool. They're just a tool to help you get there. They're not the end all be all, and they're not the only answer. The healthy lifestyle is the answer. So weight training, eat proper nutrition, and the drugs can help you maybe get past, that final 10 yards, down the field for the touchdown. You can make it so far without it, but if there is that end piece that you just can't get to, or if there's a metabolism issue or a hormonal issue and it can get you past that, use it to your advantage.
Absolutely.
So so we decided to do a little news update, and we'll be bringing you these here and there as things pop up. Nora, you're always sending me, articles. I'll send you something if I see something. It's like, ooh, this is really cool. Did you see this?
This is relevant to what we do. What is this? What does this mean?
Exactly.
This means something.
Exactly. And so expect us to talk more about things like this, and we'll do it at the top of the show. And then we'll jump into our main topic today. But just to remind you, you're listening to Moving Conversation with Nora and Brian. Do us a favor. If you like us, subscribe. It'll be in your podcast every week without even asking for it. It'll just pop in there and download. If you really like us, give us a 5-star rating. It helps with our analytics and algorithms and all that stuff. Email movingconvos@gmail.com if you have any questions you'd like us to cover. Like today, I got that email and it said, please, I'd love you to cover tendonitis. I'd love you to cover golfer's elbow. So I was like, ooh, perfect. It was on the list anyway, so we just moved it a little higher up in the, to the top of the queue. So let's jump in.
All right. So who gets tennis elbow or golfer's elbow, and why?
Everybody can get it.
From any number of things, not just golf and tennis people.
And that's the key. I mean, I hate to say this, but I just had a client, I kid you not, last week, and he's a physician. And he said, oh yeah, I've got pain right here. And he was pointing at his elbow. And I said, oh, okay. Could be tennis elbow where he was feeling it. I said, no, it's not that. I don't play tennis. No. And I was like, okay. And I just let it go, because sometimes people know more than I do. But at the same time, I was thinking, all right, well, I'm going to have to modify a few things that what we're doing and remind him that, look, it can be caused by, it's like tendonitis of any other part of the body. It can be caused by any number of things. Oh, it's an overuse injury.
Right. So let's back up just a moment and go. So there's golfer's elbow and tennis elbow, which are also called medial and lateral epicondylitis. So the epicondyle is basically the bones at the bottom of your humerus, of your upper arm bone. And these are muscles that either attach to the medial side of that or to the lateral side of that.
So if you're touching your elbow,
or the outside of your arm.
Yeah, if you're touching your elbow, they're the bony parts, that are on the
stick out.
Inside and outside, and those are going to be the tender parts. If you actually have this, that's often
you'll notice it.
Yeah, that's often where you're going to have the tenderness and be like, oh yeah, don't touch there. Please don't touch there.
Yeah. So medial epicondylitis is considered golfer's elbow.
Yep.
Because golfers tend to have more stress on the inside of their elbow at the end of that, hitting that golf ball.
Yep.
Right? They kind of do a big swing, boom, 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 and then their arm is they're supinated and they're extended and they hit that ball, and that's where the force goes through the inside of the elbow.
Yep. And also in the golf swing, this happens even more often to those who get very what we call wristy, which is they're trying to do a little bit more wrist flexion. And that can actually, be part of that issue. Yeah, it'll exacerbate it.
Now, tennis elbow is the opposite. Tennis is on the outside of the elbow, the lateral side of the elbow. And if you think about a tennis hit, you're hitting and you're hitting it as the elbow straightens and you're feeling more of that force through the outside of the elbow.
Yeah, sort of when you're thinking of a backhand especially,
Yes.
When you're hitting that backhand, which most people, if you think about it, all the tennis people that I've ever trained, Very strong forehand often are weaker at the backhand. They don't feel as comfortable. Yeah. They'd rather align their body so they can only hit the forehand because that's where they feel their power is, and they can get topspin, etc. Whereas the backhand is usually where they're a little bit on the weaker side.
Now, there was a moment, okay, I'm not the strongest person in my upper body. I'm just going to throw that out there. Y'all know that. Now you know that. True confessions. And I went to a batting cage with some friends. I'd never done that before. And so, the ball's coming at you. You have a baseball bat and you're hitting the ball.
I would have paid money to watch this, by the way.
Yeah, it was kind of hilarious. I can't say that the major leagues will ever be, inviting me to join them. Really, it'll never happen. But it was interesting because I didn't have to hit that ball very many times.
Yeah.
To feel it in my elbow.
Yep.
And to feel the vibration, because the ball's coming pretty fast. I think it was a metal bat, so it wasn't a lot of absorption. And it was like I felt that vibration right up into my elbow. Yep. And I was like, oh. And I think, the same thing happens with the golf swing or tennis. Now, the other thing, too, is it can also happen by just whatever your ergonomics are at your desk, using your computer, your mouse, wherever your keyboard is. All those things can also irritate that area just through, again, overuse.
Absolutely. My dad got his working in a warehouse. He was, part of his job was just reboxing things to... one warehouse closed down. He was reboxing it, taking stuff to the other warehouse. He was a salesman for brake parts for an automotive company. And in just doing that, putting the boxes together, taking them out, putting them in, just that constant gripping. And if you've ever lifted up, brake pads, they weigh a little bit. They're not empty boxes. They have some weight to them, and doing it over and over again and squeezing just the grip strength alone for 3 or 4 days straight. Suddenly, he had tennis elbow and couldn't figure out why. He's never played tennis a day in his life.
What am I doing? Yeah.
Not a day in his life.
Those names are terrible that way.
They are. And so he was frustrated, saying, why did I get this? Now, I will say this. I have had both. In my right hand, I have had medial epicondylitis, and I got it doing pull-ups. We talked about this last week. I jumped up to do a pull-up, and it was more of a letdown. So you jump up, hold yourself up, and you slowly lower yourself down. Well, as I was slowly lowering myself down, I actually felt a pop, and someone across the room heard it. I had my headphones on, so I heard it through my body, but I didn't actually hear it.
Yeah.
And she said, "What was that?" I said, "You heard that?" She goes, "Yeah, it sounded like someone snapped." And I went, "Oh." Boy. I said, "Okay, that was part of the muscle." And we had a physical therapist on staff at the time, and the next day it was really beginning to get inflamed and ticked off. And she said, "Yep, you tore a little bit of the muscle." She said, "That happens. It's not all off the bone because you can see it's still there. You can palpate it and still feel it. It's there. But you tore a little bit. Okay, it's going to take time to heal." And it took years before it actually calmed all the way down. And the lateral epicondylitis I had on my left side. And that was caused by lifting the flooring that I was telling you about last week, where I was hiking it up, sort of doing almost like, hard to explain, but an overhand grip, lifting it off the ground. So I was really using the extensors in my wrist to hold this up. And they're 4x8 sheets. So for me, I wanted it up high enough so I could walk with it. So I'm lifting it up so it was just under my chin. And we had probably moved 20 of them. And, one person each. And I lifted one, and all of a sudden, I felt the muscle give out. And silly me, I kept doing it. And that was a 3-year battle to get rid of it. It was something that took a long time. Now, I'm going to tell you, if you've never had this before, it is extremely painful. With the medial epicondylitis, I could still use my hand. I could still do things with it, even though it hurt. I could still do things and just had to watch, any pulling exercises, anything that involved my flexors. However, when it came to the lateral epicondylitis, the tennis elbow, I couldn't lift a coffee cup. I couldn't turn a doorknob. I couldn't do anything with that hand. It was that bad. And I've talked to physicians about it, and they said, "Oh yeah, tennis elbow hurts a lot more than golfer's elbow." I mean, on a exponential scale, it ramped up big time.
So we talked last time about tendonitis and tendinosis. So if you want to review that, you're welcome to.
Yep.
But basically what happens is, again, let's talk about those two just briefly. Tendonitis is essentially typically caused by overuse, which both of your situations were.
Yep.
There's overuse of the tendon. And it had to do more work than it was capable of at that time.
Yep.
And it caused some damage.
Yep.
Now, in one case, it sounds like there was actually some tissue damage. You actually pulled something.
Yep.
The other one, it sounds like it may have been just local irritation,
yep.
right? That you didn't actually tear anything in a big way. So, but what happened, it sounds like for you, is that tendonitis, which is just that inflammation, then became more chronic.
Yes.
And that's where tendinosis comes in. We actually have some damage in the tendon tissue that is not allowing it to heal, causes repeated inflammation and irritation, and is just a lot slower to get better.
Yep. And it would get better. I would think it would be better.
Yeah.
You know, it would be better briefly, you know, get a little better. And then I'll say, oh, okay, yeah, I can pick up my glass now. I can pick up a cup. I can, you know, type. I can do all of these things. Oh, okay, it's getting better. And then I would exercise, do a workout, fine, for about 2 or 3 workouts. And then all of a sudden, it would be back with a vengeance.
It's back.
Yeah.
Yes.
With a vengeance. It would be haunting. And again, like I say, it was years before it finally calmed down. And could that be partially on me because I should have just done nothing for 6 months? Probably, but you know, I'm in the exercise game. I got to work out. So, you know, I found ways around not using my hand. I'll be honest. I found ways around doing that. But it was just one of these chronic things. Whereas I think in my medial epicondylitis was probably more like that it was tissue damage, but it became tendonitis, and it did heal. And occasionally, because it's going to be weaker just because I did tear some of the muscle tissue, it every now and then talks to me a little bit, and I just say, oh, okay, and I stop whatever I'm doing if I'm doing heavy rows or something like that and say, oh, not today, and it clears up. The other side, though, that was the recurring one, and that I'm sure went into that tendinosis.
That's a great example of what we talked about last time. Tendonitis on one side, tendinosis on the other, and kind of how the natural history of the injury, as we sometimes talk about, goes forward. Now, a couple of other things is, Brian mentioned this a bit. What you're doing with your hands affects your elbow.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, which is really important with tendonitis because you're like, why is my elbow so irritated? Most of the wrist and finger flexors, so things that basically make you make a fist, come through the front of the arm. If my palm is forward, it's going to come through that side of my arm to my medial epicondyle. And there's kind of a common tendon attachment up on that medial epicondyle.
Yep.
On the opposite side, the lateral side, is all of my extensors. So my extensors of the wrist, my extensors of the fingers, and all of those connect up into that lateral epicondyle. So whatever you're doing with your hands directly influences that area. So that's why we, bring up grip and where we're going, and we get into exercises and different things to do about it. We're going to talk a lot about how you work with your hands.
Yeah, yeah. And just in general, I find that the majority of people are much stronger in their flexors than their extensors.
Well, there's twice as many muscles there, too. You've got 2 layers of wrist and finger flexors, and you've got 1 layer on the backside. And what do? We don't go wave like the queen, right? We don't do the queen wave. We mostly hold on to things,
exactly.
Right? We're designed to grip things. That's what we do with our paws.
Evolutionarily, exactly. You said with our paws.
Very important.
We're meant to climb trees. We're meant to hold on to things. We're meant to lift and things like that. You know, if you think about, I've heard this a long time ago, an alligator, for instance, its jaw clamping ability is 100 times stronger than its jaw opening. If his mouth is closed, you could hold it shut with one hand because he doesn't have the muscles to open it up. But to close, he'll bite through almost anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So for us, we've never needed our extensors to be that strong evolutionarily. It's nothing. It just it just opens our hand back up.
It's just balancing the incredible amount of work we have to do with our flexors.
Yep.
Which is why you get, again, an imbalance between the two, and one tends to be weaker than the other. So typically the extensors are much weaker than the flexors.
Yep.
And that creates imbalances that come up into that elbow tendonitis.
Yeah, I had a physical therapist that was working with us here in the facility, and she, at the time that I was working mine, she noticed that my flexors, were very strong. Because I've been lifting for years. So, for me to
you've been
do
weightlifting forever.
forearm flexor exercises, it's like, okay, give me a heavy weight. It doesn't matter. But extensors, I was doing, even on my good non-affected side, I was doing, a fifth of the weight. And she said, you really should get those to be closer to equal. And I said, equal? That blew me away because I'm thinking I'm never going to get that strong because my flexors are just predominantly stronger. But it did dawn on me, we don't focus enough on those extensors. And when you do focus on them with clients, they burn out really fast.
So guys, take this with me for whatever you're doing out there. Take a moment and put your hands on the desk in front of you or even just on your legs. And all I want you to do from there is just basically extend your wrist, meaning lift your fingers and your wrist up and down, just like kind of like you're patting yourself, but you're keeping the bottom of your hand anchored, right? And just like tapping, like I'm patting my legs. That's your wrist extensors and your finger extensors. And if you're like most people I work with, you do 5 or 10 of those and you're burning.
Yep.
Right? If I turn the other way and I'm basically doing the same thing where I'm basically flexing my fingers, I can do that all day.
Yep.
And do that all day, right? Holding pens and all that stuff. So that's a really easy way to think about like extension, wrist extension, finger extension is not generally as strong as flexion.
Yep. So that's something to think about for just in general when you're working with clients. Mm-hmm. I will introduce to them extensor exercises, just occasionally, but consistently so that, especially if they say they want to take up pickleball, we hear that now a lot. So when I hear that, it's like, oh, okay, I know exactly what I need to start focusing on just a little bit, not overboard, but a little bit, making sure that we're getting those stronger. But you said it a little while ago. It's not just flexion and extension. Our wrists and the position of our wrists do a lot more than that because we can pronate and supinate. Yes. We have lateral flexion as well. And we have all of those in pronated and supinated positions.
Right. You can make circles with your wrists, right? If you play with them, you can just make little circles. All of those are possible, right? All of those are potential in the wrist, any of those motions.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's the thing that people forget when they're doing exercises is that you don't just want to do flexion and extension. You want to do supination. You want to do pronation. And you want to do lateral flexion as well, because all of those are going to affect the wrist. And all of those are going to affect the musculature.
Exactly.
So,
so this gets us into, right, so with tendinitis and tendinosis, which is what we're basically talking about here, the first thing is trying to decrease the irritation and the inflammation.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of it is rest, ice, compression, elevation. So just, not overdoing it.
Yep.
To your point, Brian, like, okay, I know I just can't do that exercise today. I'm going to give it a couple of days to calm down and then I can go back to it. So, calming down, compression can be helpful. So a little compression sleeve or something on there can be a little bit helpful if that's useful to you. Sometimes it is. Anti-inflammatories, if that's appropriate for you or whatever. So just keeping the inflammation down is part of that. One little piece of advice I sometimes give is, with a lot of my clients with elbow tendonitis, what I found was they sleep curled up. With their elbows bent and kind of, tucked under their chin or whatever they're going to do. And for those clients, I would make them sleep with their elbows straight, which drove them nuts. But a lot of times that also seemed to decrease the irritation of the elbow, just to have it in an extended position all day rather than having it in a flexed position all day or all night.
I want to make mention about something with that ties into something that my physical therapist and I noticed. After we'd been working for a while on just the elbow, she dove into the tricep. And how tight that tricep in comparison to sides, when she did primarily body work, she was digging into there and she was about throwing me off the table. It was crawling out of my skin. It hurt so much. We did the other side. And I didn't have much reaction at all. So it was very much apparent that one was related to the other. That tricep, especially down where it attaches, the olecranon process, that was really, really tight. And that was even getting inflamed.
So the tricep with the lateral epicondylitis is directly related.
Absolutely.
I mean, that was one of those things too, where I We're working with a lot of clients with this over the years, mostly people who are in the tech industry and that kind of stuff, and have this from just coding for 27 hours. Um, and basically, same thing. I would just, you guys can try this at home too. Like I would just grab my tricep, and I would have them just grab their tricep, or I would gently massage it. And it was like somebody had poured glass into it. It was so tender.
Yep.
And so irritated, because that's that whole chain. We were talking about myofascial chains comes from that tricep across and then comes down into the whole back of that lower arm, into all the extensors. And so again, you often have to look not locally. You got to look distally, and you got to look proximally. You got to look away from the area, and you got to look at the other side of the area, because all of those will deeply influence that. Yep. And once I had clients start to release the triceps, their lateral epicondylitis or their tennis elbow just really made substantial progress, which it was not making before. Typically.
And something to think about for contraindications, because push-ups, for instance, I've had clients with tennis elbow, and they do push-ups on their own and then come in and say, yeah, it's back. I've got the tendonitis, my tennis elbow's back. And I was, have you been playing? What have you been doing? We've been strengthening it. And I say, well, I did push-ups. And I'm like, okay, you did tricep work without even realizing it, thinking, well, I'm not using my wrists, so they're in a fixed position. Yeah. I should be fine. Yep. And we realized, okay, that definitely put strain on that area and reignited it. So it's just something to think about, whenever I've had someone with tennis elbow, it's like, okay, I'm going to limit the amount of direct tricep work I'm going to do. Because I can do straight arm chest work. I can do all sorts of other things. I don't have to do presses with a bent elbow. I don't have to get the tricep involved at the moment. We want to strengthen it down the road. But while it's calming down, you definitely don't want to keep irritating it by doing it another exercise that you think is safe.
That'll just make it cranky. And one thing I want to bring up here too, Brian, is I can see Brian, you guys can't, but we're on FaceTime, so I can see him. We're talking about this. And when he talked about lifting up those floor pieces, right, you basically were coming into wrist extension and then pulling it up to you, that elbow flexion, right? So you guys can picture that. It's like your palms are facing forward. I'm holding on to something and I'm pulling it up. And my palms are still facing forward, holding on to that thing, which makes perfect sense in terms of irritating that entire chain.
Yep, especially if it's not that strong.
Yes, exactly. Well, that tonsillitis tendinosis, we fundamentally talked about those tissues do not have the endurance to do the job you're making them do. That's when they get irritated. They've got the endurance to do it. You don't notice it. It's when they're too weak that you notice it.
And what I found is with elbow tendonitis, rather than just rotator cuff, is a lot of times there will be a traumatic issue, whether they've gone to a tennis camp, or they decided to play pickleball and now they're playing 4 days a week. So they're doing something that is way beyond what they were doing, and they're hitting it 1,000 times. Or like me, these sheets of plywood, they were 1-inch thick plywood with, discs on them for absorption because it was dance floor. So you got to figure those were probably 75, 100 pounds a piece, which isn't heavy, but it's heavy in how I was doing it. So repetition after repetition after repetition, the muscle gave out. Unlike the rotator cuff, where I find it's usually more of a accumulation that takes place over time. It can be traumatic. You can see someone, blow it out in one issue, but a lot of times it's built up. This definitely, I've seen it be from overuse in a short period of time.
An acute something.
Yep.
Again, tennis camp, golf camp, lifting a whole bunch of stuff like you're talking about, somebody moving. I've had clients who had to move their whole house and didn't have a lot of help. And so they're just lifting a box and putting it in, lifting a box and putting it in. And that would do it. Or, to your dad's story of working in the warehouse, like all those circumstances are just overuse, again, beyond what those tissues can tolerate.
But I'm also going to say this, it's not just weight oriented. One of my mentors told me a story that he would see in his physical therapy practice. He would see around Christmas time, some people would get another job, and one of the jobs that you could do is work at the post office, and it's sorting mail. How heavy are those envelopes? They're not heavy at all, right? They're super light.
They're under an ounce.
But how many are you doing? thousands upon thousands upon thousands over and over and over and over and over again for a 2, 3, 4 week period to make extra money. And they were developing it. When he told me that, it was sort of like, oh my gosh, it's not just like mine where I was lifting up this 100-pound thing, or hitting a tennis ball where that force is pretty substantial with a long racket, but it could be something very light, but a tremendous amount of repetitions with a very light weight. So again,
right. So it's endurance,
it's the
endurance, right? It may not be
endurance.
strength. It may just be endurance, like those tissues. And one thing we talk about too is recovery is necessary.
Yeah.
And that's a classic example if you don't allow it to recover. If you did that one day, took 2 days off, and then did it again, you probably could do that for a month and be fine.
Yep.
But it's like you do it Monday and then Tuesday and then Wednesday and then Thursday and then Friday and you just keep going.
Yep.
And that's really where you don't give the tissues time enough to heal and to recover.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. And with golfer's elbow, we see very similar issues in that they need the time to recover. And those I find are often more bicep oriented as well. So they're going to inflame by trying to do bicep work or rowing, any pulling towards you. So, and we do that, especially in a gym environment. We do a lot of rowing. We do a lot of pulling. We do a lot of that. And any gripping is going to tick it off. And we just said, we do that. That's what we're made for. You're constantly lifting things up. I mean, I've got the mouse in front of me, and what does my hand automatically do? It curls around it, and it goes into a little flexion. So that all is also something you need to watch out for, is getting that bicep, stretched out. I found that was the one thing that worked better than anything else for me on that side, was not only stretching out the forearm flexor, where we'll talk about that when we get to the exercises in just a minute, but also stretching out the bicep.
Right. So bicep if it's the front and tricep if it's the back, because those chains are continuous right up the arm.
And that is looking more globally than just locally thinking, oh, it's just my elbow. Right.
Or just your wrist, or just thinking distal to that.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's talk about exercise. Okay. Let's talk about, when we talk about exercise, we talk about both strength training as well as mobilizing, right? So we want to get some mobility in the area. So we want to talk about stretching, and there's a variety of ways to stretch out both of these. Okay. And I find that is something that needs to be done almost first in my mind, before we lift any weights.
With any tendon issue, whether tendonitis or tendinosis, I honestly always start with mobility first.
Yep.
I start with just trying to create the range of motion, work on stretching, work on whatever mobility I can get in there. Now, what's interesting here for both these is like the biceps, the front of the arm, is interesting to stretch. If I straighten because we often straighten our elbows a lot, and I don't feel a whole lot of stretch when I do that. Now, if I bring the arms back behind me, right? So that'll get a little more stretch. And then if I extend my wrists, I may start to feel that whole chain.
Yep. The one,
So
the one that I found works best, and my clients seem to love this, is I take my hand about chest high-ish, and I put it out flat against the wall with a straight elbow. Then I begin slowly turning my body away from it. So eventually it's behind me. And I still keep my palm flat against the wall.
And your fingers pointing behind you, not up toward your head, not toward the floor, right? But behind you, because it's at that angle.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's going to not only get the forearm flexors, but also get into the bicep. And when I become more and more flexible, because I get to a certain point and it's like, oh, I feel that. And that's as far as I'm going to go today. And then tomorrow I may go a little further. The next day I go, and eventually I'm turning quite a ways away from it, and it starts to feel a lot better. And eventually, at first, I'm going to feel it primarily in my elbow joint and my forearm. Over a week, 2 weeks, I'm starting to feel it more in my bicep as well.
Right, it moves up.
Yeah, and that is when I really find that gives me more of the relief.
Yep, absolutely. And for the tricep, right, it's similar, although the tricep is interesting. I have not found that tricep stretches. There's one where you basically just bring the arm across the body and pull.
Doesn't do anything.
I don't exactly. That's my experience. So it doesn't do a darn thing. Or bring the arm up like you're trying to touch your shoulder with the palm of your hand and then pull that elbow up.
Yep.
That might get you somewhere. And for some people that gets something.
Yep.
For other, but I really find for this area that I do a lot of self-massage, just grabbing that, or I'll even do it on a roller or with a stick or something, or manual therapist if I got one. But I found that I feel like that's quicker and easier for me than doing trying to get a stretch in there.
Yeah, the stretch itself is not easy. What I'll do is that overhead one, I like that, but because of shoulder girth, I've got, shoulders here. I find that I need to actually put my humerus up against the wall and lean into it so that it takes my elbow more over my head. And I'll put a stick in my hand behind my back and then pull down with the other hand. So that'll allow me to get a little deeper of a stretch.
Okay. Yeah.
I can use a rope. I can use a towel. I've got a bunch of wooden dowels around here. So I just grab one of those and start pulling down. And I find that's a way that I can get it. And the more I lean into the wall against my arm, I can sort of pull that in toward my head a little bit more and it gets a little deeper stretch. But that's just for the tricep. I find we still need to stretch out the extensors, and we're not getting any of those really involved when we do any of those stretches.
No, and one thing, so again, I just want to make this clear. So if you guys have ever done that stretch where like you have one arm is going up over, it's like behind you, like it's trying to touch your upper back. The other arm's coming behind your back, like it's trying to touch your middle back, right? You hold on to something, or maybe you can touch your fingers, but that's what Brian's doing, just so you know when he's talking about being on the wall. Just because it was like, I think I get this, but I was trying to do it just from hearing it.
It's tough in audio, in an audio environment. It's kind of tough for us to explain everything.
I know, to talk about movement. My favorite wrist extensor exercise this is really silly, but I call this the flamingo looks at the armpit. So I basically take the fingers and I pull all 5 fingers together, like you're making a little beak. And then I basically pull that so that it's like I'm flexing the wrist a lot. The arm is straight, the elbow straight. Oh. And I make basically like a little bird head. And then from there, and then I start to rotate that so that bird head is going towards the outside. So I'm internally rotating the humerus. Ah. And for me, that gets that whole chain going up from the extensors into the lateral epicondylitis. And then, I get a little bit, I don't really get tricep, but it really gets the wrist going. Yeah. And I've done that a lot. For those of you who don't know, I've worked at Balanced Body for a long time, a Pilates manufacturing company. And we have a ton of people out in our warehouse who are doing repetitive manual tasks. We have seamstresses, we have people who do sanding, we have people who assemble stuff. So they're using a screwdriver, right, for hours a day. And one of the things that we've developed for them is a warm-up and a cool-down that they do at the beginning and the end of each of their shifts. And one of the things that I had particular seamstresses do is exactly that stretch. And actually all of them, I gave all of them that stretch because everybody was getting elbow tendonitis from, if you're screw driving all day or, leading thick vinyl fabric through a sewing machine. So that's been really helpful for all those guys out there.
Yeah, it's something that I've done and teach all of my clients similar, might be a little bit more advanced, is almost everybody learns to put their arm out perfectly straight and to flex their wrist and to pull down with their fingers sort of open. Okay,
exactly.
That's not going to get a whole lot. That's not going to get anything. If you make a fist,
unless you're really tight.
Right.
Yes.
When you make a fist and you do the same thing, suddenly you feel more. What I do is I have people start that way with the fist and use the other hand to pull it into flexion. Then when they start feeling that's good, but they want a little bit more, I say go to your bed. Make 2 fists. You can do both hands at the same time. Put it on the bed and go into wrist flexion and use your body weight to push down on it. And what happens is because it's on the bed,
you're cushioning your wrist.
It cushions the wrist.
You can't do this on the floor. Floor is too hard.
Floor is too hard. If you have a thick massage table, you can do it on that. But on the bed works really well because it allows a little bit of give so it's not going to be as firm. And you can hold it for a second or two and back off, sort of like active isolated stretching.
Yeah.
You hold it for,
just boom,
and back off.
Breathe in, breathe out.
Exactly. And I'll do it 10 or 15 times. And I find people really like that because they can do it, you know, when they wake up in the morning, they can sort of get their wrists going and do that. And they say it really opens things up and they feel like, oh, it's not as bad now. So it's really waking it up, stretching it out first thing. And then during the day at their desks, I'll say, okay, now make your fist, extend your arm, and now just pull it with the other hand. The other thing to think about is a lot of people will find one angle and stick with that angle only.
You got to keep moving that around.
You got to move that around.
You have to experiment a little bit with it because you don't know. Those tensions can come through different vectors, right? Different angles.
Exactly. So when they're doing it on the bed or if they're doing it with their other hand, with their arm straight down toward the ground to start with, you know, so 6 o'clock, then maybe 3 o'clock, then maybe 12 o'clock or 2 o'clock. And you'll find a vector that's sort of like, oh, yeah, that's really tight. That's going to be your sweet spot. And, you know, focus on that one. Same with, you had said, you know, when your hand's on the wall for the forearm flexors, I will eventually have them turn that down a little bit toward the ground or go up because it's just going to change the pull of the angle of the muscle. And that can cause a significant effect. And again, you find the one that's like, oh, wow, yeah, that's the guy right there. And that's the one you sort of want to return to.
Yep. Find the stretch, find what it is. And I found honestly that once you can find the right mobility work for that client, they can often really keep their pain under control, you know, again, for a period of time anyway, so that you can then start to strengthen.
Yep. And self massage work, whether it would be with your hands, a small ball, golf ball or lacrosse ball, whatever you got lying around, tennis ball, you know, just working that out, working long strides, you know, I find works really well up and down the arm. Be gentle at first, work your way up. Mm-hmm. There's something that a company created, I think it was about 4 years ago, they sent me one, which I don't know if you've ever seen this, but remember how they used to dry clothes where you had the two like rolling pins and you had to put the clothes through it? Okay, it was like...
Yeah, I think it's called a mangle.
Is that what it's called? I never knew what it was called.
Yeah.
But this was sort of like that it had... You opened it up and you put it around your forearm and you closed the top and you moved your arm forward and back between two rollers, basically. And I got to say, it felt pretty good. I got to say, when I tried it, I tried it on a couple clients, and for us movement professionals who play with these tools, I picked it up pretty quick. Watching clients who have no idea what to do with these things is quite comical.
Like, this is not a good consumer product here.
It really wasn't.
This requires too much education.
Yeah, exactly.
Or too much something.
Yeah. But I could see that, okay, it seemed helpful. It was rolling the tissues. So if you can do something like that, or have your body worker, whoever you're working with, your massage therapist, do body work on that area, and especially for tennis elbow, getting into the tricep, very beneficial, very beneficial. And I find that works pretty much better than anything else. And then when things are calmed down, we can get into the strengthening. Now,
strengthening, you often talk about isometric stuff. I'm going to talk about simple things that are sort of I'm not even sure pre-isometric, but basically a lot of this, I will start with just simple, no resistance, wrist and finger flexion and wrist and finger extension, just as a very, very basic.
Absolutely.
So again, like we just had you with your hands on your thighs or your hands on the desk, just lifting up the wrists, or lifting up the hands. Or keep the wrist further, lift up the hands, or lift up the fingers, or play a little piano with your fingers, keeping them straight. Just working those extensors, or on the other side, flexors. Right? So with my palm up, pulling them up, or gripping my hand. Now, there's a lot of toys and tools for this. There's little squishy eggs, and there's, stress balls, and there's, And there's rubber bands, which I use a lot for extension. And then I
Yes.
use something squishy for flexion and something with a little bit of resistance for extension.
Yep.
And lots of tools and stuff to play with those things.
I find the thing that I got, a company that was at one of our trade shows, they do scheduling stuff. Well, they had these little peaches or oranges,
Yeah.
orange
Yeah.
squeeze balls.
Yep.
It just happened to be so light that it was the perfect starting point for almost any of my clients who have this issue because it was super light. I mean, anybody could
Yeah.
squeeze
It was
this.
almost nothing.
Almost
Yeah.
nothing. But it was a way to go from nothing to something. I find too many
Yeah.
people try and grab, a wrist, blaster type of thing that they want to squeeze. And it's like, look, way too hard. Start with something
Yeah.
really, really light and squeeze that. So I'm
Yep.
always on the lookout when I go to any trade show and things. People that give away those squeeze balls, I collect them all. I collect them all because every one of them has a different density.
Yeah, I do the same thing. In fact, I was at Target the other day, and you go to like their little party spot,
Yeah.
or you go to the kids' toy spot, and you'll find a bag of 6 squishy Nerf balls, like super squishy, and you
Yep.
have another one that's kind of a little firmer, and another one that's got some spikes on it. So
Yep.
right, lots of options, and they're usually dirt cheap. Or Oriental Trading Company, I know has a lot of those options too.
Yep. Yep.
And I give those away. I give those to clients and just say, okay, just start with this.
Yep.
Just pick it up and just squeeze and release, or take a rubber band and say, anchor it around your thumb, and then let one finger open it up and close, and open, close, next finger, next finger, next finger.
Yep. And you can find on, online, Amazon, wherever, a variety pack of rubber
Yes.
bands. So you
Yes.
find the super, I mean, the ones that we got yellow, they were super thin. I don't know what these are supposed to hold, but they work great for this because I
Right,
will.
because they're really light.
Super
To
light.
start you off.
And
Yes.
it's just opening it up and, start with 5, go to 8,
Yep.
build up in repetition over time. Because again, remember, it's repetition. We need to
Yeah.
build endurance. And then you can get into the point eventually where you're doing wrist extension work, maybe with a dumbbell. Start with, a half a pound or a quarter
Yep.
pound. Those of you who have
Yep.
leg weights that are adjustable, those ingots are fantastic for it because they usually start out at a quarter pound or a half pound. So you don't have to even look for a dumbbell. You can also do cans of soup at home,
Yep. Yep.
and that's something else to think about. People who have this issue, oftentimes their grip is a little too narrow. So opening their grip.
Yep. Give them a wider base.
Yep.
Right. So like in
Does
Pilates,
help.
if you've got a handle, a lot of times I'll take like our little handles that we use. I won't have them use a strap, for example, like our little Pilates straps, because that's a really tight grip.
Yep.
I'll take a handle and then I'll take like a sticky pad and just wrap around it. Or I'll put a little neoprene thing on there, like sleeve on there, so that it's a pretty fat grip.
Yep.
I've even taken like some of the dowels, a basic dowel, and then I use a dowel and dowel and pipe insulation.
Yeah.
Because you can get pipe insulation at your basic Home Depot store or whatever,
Yep.
home store, and you put the dowel inside there, and then they've got a big fat grip,
Yep. Yep.
and that can be really helpful for any kind of like wrist work or even just all the work we do holding on to a bar.
And if you have your own studio, what I recommend is, anything where you have a cable or you're
Yeah.
using the reformer and you have a grip,
Yep.
you have the D
Yep.
ring or whatever you want to call it. I will say, get some medical tape, the white tape,
Yep.
and tape the pipe insulation or just wrap that, keep wrapping it until you get to the thickness you want and leave it
Yep.
like that. Because you're
Yep.
going to have, especially our older clients who may not have really good grip strength, a wider grip feels more comfortable for them.
Yep.
And so this is something that I've done and they say, oh, this feels so much better.
Yeah.
For rows or for pull downs or something like that, it's just easier for them. So widening
Yeah,
the
and
grip
that's
can make a
yeah.
difference.
And that's true for them at home too.
Yes.
Right. Just, if somebody, for example, has a child and the child has a carrier, right, that they've got to take in and out of the car. Sometimes those carriers have a really funky handle on them.
Yep.
It's too narrow. It's a weird shape. They do all kinds of weird things with those things. So again, maybe they need to wrap something around that, even if it's just their sweater or a towel. Wrap it around it so they've got a thicker grip.
Yep.
Anything that somebody's doing regularly, because I also find along with exercises, I want to look at their economic situation,
yes,
what they're doing every day, try to figure out what's causing the irritation if I can, or at least exacerbating it, and then see if we can adjust their work environment or their sleeping environment or whatever else they're doing to minimize that stress on that area while they're recovering.
Yep. Yep. Now, when we're talking about resistance training, there's a lot of different tools you can use. I like for extension work to have a wooden dowel with a rope through it. I actually have one that's shaped like a little bitty barbell. It's hard to find these, but what's nice about it is you can sort of grab the little balls in different ways, sideways, overhand, under, any way you want, and it just conforms to your hands really nicely. But you can also just use a wooden dowel, drill a hole, put a rope through it, and there you go. It's cheap. I've done it with PVC pipe.
You attach like a hand weight to it. I attach a
hand weight.
I attach a 1 pound hand weight or a 2 pound hand weight. Just tie it onto it.
Exactly.
A little dumbbell.
And extend your arms out. I guarantee you, you do that, and you put a 1 pound weight on it. And I'm 6 feet tall, so my rope is usually about 5 feet in length. And you roll that all the way up, and you do that 2 or 3 times all the way up. You are burning beyond belief. But you know what? Over time, you will be able to get strong enough to the point where your shoulders will give out before your wrists give out. And that's sort of my key when people are saying the weight almost feels too heavy for my shoulders. I'm like, okay, you've gotten some strength. Good. This is good.
And I do that. I start with that without even any resistance.
Yes.
So just a dowel. Maybe it's padded up so it's thicker. And you can do both arms at the same time. Again, 2 versions. Elbow straight. One is wrist extension.
Yep.
The other one is turning the palms up and wrist flexion. Then I'll basically alternate hands.
Yeah.
So I'm pulling it. I'm pulling with one into extension, the other one's going into flexion, and then I reverse that.
Yep.
Like I'm kneading dough a little bit, right? And I'll go that up, and I'll also do that same thing, lowering that back down.
Yep.
I'm going in the other direction.
Yep.
And again, it doesn't take. This is like 1 rep or 2,
Yep.
even with no resistance.
Yep.
Do that for a while. Then you add a light resistance, again, like a 1 pound weight or a ½ pound weight even, and you slowly build that up.
Yep.
And that's a fabulous way to do that.
And I will put on our social media, both Nora's, mine, and for Moving Convos on Instagram. We'll put some videos for this on there. The thing that people forget about that I think is vitally, vitally important is pronation and supination and lateral flexion.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, well, how do you do that? Well, if you have a tennis racket, you can just hold it upright and go into tip it one direction and then the other direction. That's pronation, that's supination. For my men, I have hammers here because, I own the facility, so I have to sometimes fix things. So I've got 2 weighted hammers. I've got a regular one, a 16 ounce, and I've got a mini sledge. And so I start them out with the regular hammer. And if it's too heavy, you move up toward the weighted end, and you just have them do that. And as they get stronger, you can go further and further down until the weight is more distal to the hand and work your way up. And again, if it's someone who, is more advanced, I'll use the heavier one where it's a heavy weight. It works like a charm. And it's a way to get pronation and supination. You can also do lateral flexion by holding the arm up. So what I do is I take my upper arm and I make it parallel to the ground. And then my forearm is going to be perpendicular to the ground.
And the palm is facing your midline, basically.
Yeah, palm facing midline. And I'll hold the hammer and I will just pretend like I'm hammering up to space. Just hammer up and up and up. That gets great lateral flexion. And I'd change angles. I will sometimes have my palm facing me, have my palm facing away, make sure I don't hit myself in the head with the hammer. But yeah, trying to just hit all the angles possible because it makes a difference. And then for the thumb side, for lateral flexion, I just have my arm straight down by my side. I let the hammer float toward the ground, and then I laterally flex it up toward my elbow. So again, I hit every angle that I possibly can. And again, you can do it with a wooden dowel that weighs almost nothing, or a tennis racket that weighs almost nothing. For my golfers out there, I'll say use your golf club. You know, find a light golf club, hold it in the middle to start, so there's not much resistance for pronation, supination, lateral flexion, and then start moving toward the handle, the grip. And as you do so, by the time you get to the grip, you're doing quite a bit of resistance because you're talking about a fairly long, you know, shaft on a club.
Yeah, big lever. One other little trick that I do for pronation and supination is take a plastic water bottle or a regular water bottle or a bigger one, fairly large, and I fill it about halfway up with water. So same idea. I'm just rolling from pronation to supination, but I have a dynamic load in there.
I like that.
Because that water, it's like a mini Viper or whatever. Or mini, there's those other ones, right?
Yeah.
So basically, if I'm going into supination, it's pulling me that way, right? Because the water's suddenly getting heavier that way. And same thing with pronation. And that's another, just again, something you got to have it around the house. If you don't have a hammer or you don't have a golf club, that's another nice way that I've done that, is just add that dynamic nature of that little bit of a slosh, right? And that change in weight as you go.
I like that. I like that a lot. And now I'm playing with that in my mind, thinking, oh, I can load that in many different ways. So that's a really great way. I like that. Okay, I'm going to play with that this week. Okay, very good.
That's because when I first saw Vipers and things, and then I think there's a watery version of that one.
Yeah.
You know, I can't remember what it's called, but I thought that was really cool. Surge, there we go. I thought that was very cool. I like that feeling of just that dynamic change in weight. So I just put a little mini, the cheapest possible little tiny water bottles you get from wherever, and I thought, oh, a little half watt bottle. You can start with that with the wrist, and then build yourself up.
I like that. Cool. Well, hopefully we gave you guys a lot of ideas. And I'm going to record some stuff this week so that we can post it. So when this drops, you can hit our Instagram accounts. You'll see the videos. We'll also put it on Facebook. Moving Convos is how you can, see all of those, as well as Nora's or my own. I'm at Fit for Life DC, number 4, FIT for Life DC. So any of those, you're going to be able to find the videos of these, and these are some good stuff. We dug pretty deep in that
here,
today.
Baby.
Yeah,
we did. Nice work.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us. Hopefully, this did spark some thoughts, and at least keep in mind that for a lot of our clients, these are areas of weakness anyway. So doing these, kind of like doing balance work, doing these is going to help anyway. So
absolutely.
throw them in. And if you have a topic you'd like to have us discuss, like someone did today, hit us up at movingconvos@gmail.com. So until next time, we'll catch you later.
Bye, guys.